Hello again, everyone. I'm Jim Alcon, editorial director of Book Trib, and we're here today with Richard Todd Devens, author of a fascinating, thought-provoking work called Dialogues with the Wise Woman. I'm holding it up. I'm trying not to block my face, but you can also see it in the upper left-hand corner of our screen a little bit. Hi, Richard. How are you today?
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for joining us. Now, Dialogues with the Wise Woman, in many ways, it's unlike a book any book I've read for quite some time. And I think, for one thing, it's basically structured as sessions or dialogues, if you will, between a troubled man and his therapist or the wise woman. So it's an interesting structure that allows us to get into a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue about who the main character is, who the troubled man is, and we'll talk about him in a minute. And also in that context, because it's structured that way, it's really more than a novel. One reviewer said it's a no-holds-barred search for truth on many levels that encourages readers to use their own rational judgment. And it's a psychological and philosophical treatise that tackles many important moral issues that we will talk about. Everything, from an examination of good and evil to kind of the way why people do things that they do and why they do them. So we'll be getting into all of that. Richard, your book has been called, one reviewer called it, the perfect read for intelligent skeptics everywhere. I love that line. Why is that the case? Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, I wanted specifically the book to be in dialogue because I can play devil's advocate. I can take two sides of an issue, and the reader wouldn't even necessarily know which position I took.
Okay, good point. And I was going to ask and get into why you chose the format you did, and that's very interesting because you've got two personalities: George, the troubled man, and Mildred, the wise old therapist. And that's interesting because you're right. You can make a lot of points and have them come out from two different points of view without the reader saying, "Okay, what's the author's point of view?" Well, it's one or the other, somewhere in between. We don't know. Mm-hmm. But what do you think? What do you think of that comment? For intelligent skeptics everywhere, intelligent skeptics. Why would it be? Go ahead.
That was actually my editor's line.
Okay.
That line there. So skeptics mean people who don't necessarily follow the mold, and they just go by what they believe. Things should not be believed just because everyone else believes it, or because you were brought up to believe something, or because it's the quote correct or right thing to believe. Things should be believed when you have evidence from your senses and when your own rational judgment tells you that it's true. So never just believe something just because you're supposed to believe it.
So it's almost like that invites the audience to pretty much question everything, right?
Exactly.
Anything and everything, and take a hard look at what your beliefs are, why you believe them, where they came from. Sometimes people will tend to follow the course, genetically or whatever the environment they grow up in, and that doesn't mean that that's necessarily the right path for them or who they are, right?
Right.
So tell us, why did you decide to write this book?
Well, about 6 years ago, I actually was scammed by a Las Vegas con artist, and I had the same experiences as my alter ego, George Sistern, in the book. Rage, couldn't live with my stupidity for allowing it to happen. So finally, I decided to write this book as a catharsis, and I created Mildred as this wise philosopher / psychologist. And very often, even when people are in the throes of depression or they have a lot of problems, they know the right answers intellectually, but emotionally they don't, because they're still in the throes of all this pain. So I created this rational, extremely intelligent, and Socratic kind of figure who would be the therapist that I would like to see if such a person existed. And I could have someone outside myself tell me all the right rational answers, even if this person didn't really exist.
So that's interesting. So you've created the consummate therapist,
Yeah.
or what you would want a therapist. So you would never need to really to use a therapist, because you, in theory, you have created the perfect therapist of how you. Right.
That's right. It's not like I would never really need to, but since so far I haven't encountered someone like that who existed, I had to create one.
Well, it's interesting. You had mentioned that the opening dialogue, where George is scammed by someone in Las Vegas, and again, that is a autobiographical, as you've just indicated.
Yeah.
Tell us, just in terms of the main, could you say there's a storyline in this book? I mean, there's sort of a thread that goes through, but how would you describe the storyline?
Well, storyline is someone is extremely depressed and in pain, but he has an appointment with this really, really special person. And just like if someone is physically hurt in an accident or they're hemorrhaging or whatever, emotional pain can be just as devastating when you need to see somebody. So it's sort of like a pilgrimage when he goes to Mercer Street and he meets this woman for the first time. And of course, they address this issue, which he's still not totally out of it the first time that he sees her. But it's a springboard for other issues, because if someone is scammed in Vegas, you could say, well, I was irresponsible, I was stupid or whatever. But it's not just the situation itself. It brings up a whole bunch of other issues regarding self-esteem, because people with a lack of self-esteem are more prone to get into situations like this in the first place. And then it brings up other issues related to the incident in terms of revenge, getting revenge. He's so intent on getting revenge. So he asked Mildred, why is revenge always wrong? And she questions that it is always wrong, but it's wrong when you hurt yourself in the process. Revenge can be okay at certain times when nothing bad happens to you. But if you're going to kill someone or hurt someone and get into jail and hurt yourself even more than you were hurt in the beginning, then in these instances, revenge is not a good thing. And
well,
then,
and that it's interesting that incident of being scammed triggers the whole discussion of okay, different people are going to handle that in different ways. I can tell you here in the offices of Book Trib, we've heard, not relating to the business, but there have been a couple of incidents where individuals have been scammed one way or another, their credit card or somebody they were dealing with. And obviously any form of that can be upsetting, but also how you handle it is, and how you think and feel about it is really, as you said, springboard is the perfect word, to start examining why are you doing it? Why are you even thinking about revenge? Some people won't be thinking about revenge. They'll be trying to say, how can I move past this as soon as possible? For George. But tell us a little bit more about George, your protagonist, or alter ego, as you say. What drives George? What are some of his issues, and what is he seeking ultimately?
Well, George was depressed and had a lot of problems before the incident even happened, because like I said, somebody with a lack of self-esteem, someone with a lack of parental support in his past is more prone to have something like this happen to him. So and he's also obsessive compulsive as a pianist and a musician, where artistic and creative people tend to be more depressed than the average person because they feel things more acutely than other people. They can experience highs in terms of ecstasy because they experience, let's say, sunset on a mountaintop or beautiful music. They can enjoy it more than the average person, but yet they can be more depressed than the average person when bad things happen because they feel things more acutely than an average person.
It's interesting that you made reference to to George's parents and what he had or didn't have, and a lot of or a theme that I saw going through the book is sometimes when you're in a communication, a confrontation, whatever it is, you don't have the benefit of knowing somebody's background. And understanding, okay, I know where this person's coming from, and because of that, I'm going to treat it this way. You kind of go on impulse because when you talk about if it's revenge, maybe if you had a better understanding of the person that you were, just life doesn't afford us those luxuries of saying, I know I've spoken to the therapist of the person I want to get even with, so I know everything about him and can use that, and I think that comes up sometimes in issues. You have an example in the book of a man and his wife were at a train stop, right? And suddenly somebody comes along and shoves the wife over, and
Yes.
the husband, what am I supposed to do? On the one hand, I need to be protective of the wife. On the other hand, who's this guy that just did this, and what do I know about him, and how am I going to handle this?
Yes.
There's a lot of impulsive things that decisions.
Yes, exactly. I was bringing up in that incident that sometimes we do not have time to assess somebody's background or context or whatever. If someone is pushing your wife onto the subway tracks, your only motivation in that instant is to save your wife.
Mm-hmm. Well, you would hope. That's what I would do. Tell us a little bit about Mildred. Who is she, and what's her background, and what makes her, say, different from your typical therapist?
Mildred was somebody who was always fascinated by the human brain, what motivated people to do certain things, to act in a certain way. But she was equally fascinated by philosophy as well as psychology, because psychology, you're dealing with emotions, and philosophy, you're dealing more with reason and factual information. And she believed, as I do, that if you combine the two of them synergistically, they become more powerful. Because a lot of times, extremely intelligent people do very, very stupid things. And it's not like they don't know that they're doing it, but the emotional side of them outweighed the logical side of them. So if somebody has an equal emphasis on philosophy and psychology, it can probably have them make better decisions when moral dilemmas come up, or how should I act in a certain situation. Or, like I mentioned in the book, a man meets a drop dead gorgeous woman, a married man meets a drop dead gorgeous woman at a seminar, and has the opportunity to have sex with her. And even highly intelligent people will give into that, even though it could ruin their marriage and it can ruin their reputation. Or someone like John Edwards, it led to lies, and then lies to cover up lies, and it just snowballed, and it ruined this person's whole career, and it can ruin your whole marriage. But if somebody has a background in philosophy, they might be more apt to not get into these situations in the first place, because they can analyze the situation by another means, not just emotionally, but intellectually and logically.
Got it. So certainly, George, in examining himself and trying to figure out who he is and get some self-awareness of him, on a larger scale, you're tackling some pretty big themes here about our society and who we are and how we live. Tell us about a couple of those and why you decided to tackle those.
What are your...
Well, things like, I mean, I'll pose a question that the book responds to. Is there good in everyone? How would you respond to that?
No, there is not good in everyone, and that's one of these things that people say so often, so they end up believing it. And I bring up in the book, just because some monsters gave their mother flowers on their birthday, and they have snippets of humanity in them, or they can be calm or soft-spoken when you first meet them and even seem pleasant, that does not mean that they are not fundamentally bad people. And what do I mean by a fundamentally bad or evil person? An evil person not only will commit bad acts, because sometimes someone could commit a bad act and not intend to do so. Like someone who's a drunken driver, he shouldn't be driving, but he didn't intend to hurt somebody. Evil people not only hurt innocent people, they intend to hurt innocent people, and they derive pleasure from doing so. And very often their acts are premeditated in addition. So that's the difference. So no, there is not good in all people. I wish that statement could be true, but it is not true.
Okay, and you touched upon revenge before. Is revenge ever justified?
Yes, if you are not hurt yourself. Like, for instance, with this poker queen, if the poker queen had been physically hurt and then George got sentenced to jail because of it, then it would not have been a good thing. But as it turned out, with Tony, who he met at Mildred's party, who was in the mafia, they actually did get revenge on the poker queen, and it was not a situation where someone was physically hurt or George could have gone to jail because of it, but he definitely got revenge. And in this particular issue, he solved the situation even better than Mildred could have done it, because Mildred didn't have the means to get him his money back. Mildred could give him the insight not to let this situation happen again, but only Tony could have been able to physically work out his scheme with his people to get George his actual money back plus some from the poker queen.
So we talked a little bit about George as your alter ego, but I'm just curious, if there's more in your. I mean, I know that George plays the piano, you play the piano, yeah. But what about your own background and experience affects and influences this story?
Well, the situation I brought into where I mentioned where Mildred said, "Why did you have to ask your mother that?" When let's say when waiters were ignoring you in restaurants or things like that, and why did you have to bring this up to your mom, who wouldn't give you the support you needed anyway? These things actually happened to me, and I almost felt sometimes, people knew who I was on the subway or in restaurants and whatever. However irrational this might seem, I actually felt these kind of things. So that's why I brought that up in the book.
So, and I guess people write about their own experience and what they know, and that certainly seems to be the
Of
case
course,
here.
I think there's almost no way for it to come out in
Any other way?
yes.
Yeah. What do you think was the most challenging part of writing this book for you?
Having representing the transcendence of George, meaning if the situation ever came up again where he could fall for this, that it wouldn't happen again, because he knew how he knew how it felt, he knew the ramifications, and even if the specific incident didn't come up again, he would know what to do to not let it happen again.
Got it. One final question, just if you could leave readers with, what would you hope readers would take away from this book?
There is always help when somebody is extremely depressed and in pain. Even though Mildred doesn't exist, there probably are extremely wise, skilled, and helpful people and caring people out there, and they should be sought out when somebody is in distress. You're never too intelligent not to be prone to get hurt, and everybody needs somebody like Mildred, if someone like that existed.
Or as we say, the wise woman.
Yes.
So we're just about out of time. Thanks, Richard. I think it's been a fascinating discussion. Once again, our author today is Richard Todd Devens. The book is Dialogues with the Wise Woman, and I strongly suggest you go find it and check it out. Again, I'm Jim Alcon with Book Trib. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.